please all of you give a big round of applause to Gabe Karp.
Perfect. Thank you, and really thanks for that panel. That was a really great discussion. Apologies, my topic probably isn't quite as interesting as AI, but we still have to talk about the other parts of technology that matter to each and every one of us. Perfect. So I wanted to talk about open source because the company that I work with, the company that I run, we've built in almost our entire business off the back of open source technology. And I'm not talking about kind of the underlying, Linux open source. I'm talking about software that's been developed by the community. To give you a little bit of background on myself, as mentioned, I'm the managing director for EMEA. I look after the business across that region. I've been working in agencies for over 15 years. I started my career at an agency called Blue State Digital, which was responsible for all of the Obama digital strategy and technology. And what I quickly learned in that agency environment was how to bridge the gap and how to leverage technology for clients. How do we think about using tools like Facebook data? How do we think about using tools like CRMs? How do we think about using content management systems to really drive results for our clients? So taking that, I moved to Europe over 10 years ago now and started to think about how do I help kind of bridge that gap between, between US-based companies looking to grow into the market in Europe, and how do we take the kind of innovation that's happening in the US at a faster rate and bring that to the market. So I helped to establish the European side of a product design studio. The studio is called Siberia. There's many reasons for that name. The story we like to tell was Siberia was the name of the building where Steve Jobs went and did his best work when he got kicked out of the main campus at Apple. We built software for companies like AOL and Nike and different big kind of enterprise organizations, all with the idea of putting design first within technology. From there, I joined 10up to really build out and lead their European and Middle East division. And that's where I started to kind of fall in love with open source technology and realized that it was really a powerful tool to think about how do we drive results for clients in a different way. So to give a little bit of background on 10up, we're a digital agency. We're about 400 people globally. We are totally distributed, never had an office. Well, we had an office for a little while in Portland, Oregon, because we had a bunch of people there and nobody showed up, so we closed it again. We've got a team across the entire globe on every continent except for Antarctica. And we work with brands around the globe. So we work with publishers, higher education, enterprise marketing, companies like Microsoft, the Nobel Foundation, to really help them put in place platforms to create great content, and then off the back of that, create great experiences of that content. Last year, we completed a merger with a company called Fueled. Fueled is a digital app and software development company, really more focused on how do we leverage design to create great experiences. And bringing those two companies together, we're able to impact and influence the entire end-to-end digital experience. Again, these are some of the companies that we work for, and it's worth noting that every single one of these, whether it's the White House or Google or Starbucks, is leveraging open source technology on a day-to-day basis to do the kind of key marketing and key activities they do every day. So jumping into kind of thinking about how we think about open source as a company and why we think it's so powerful, it allows us to innovate in the open. It allows us to make the things that we care the most about, whether it's distributing content, whether it's integrating AI into content management systems, whether it's working on a content management system like WordPress. It allows us to innovate in the open. It allows us to make that public. And we've adopted the policy that our secret sauce or our specialization isn't in hiding code from people. It's in bringing that stuff to the forefront and allowing as many people to access it as possible. As I said, we've built our business on open source. We love it. We think it is kind of central to the internet. It started with WordPress for us, but it's expanded far beyond that into tools like Elasticsearch, tools like Next.js, React, etc. All of these things that I think if you're working with technology are pretty commonplace at this point. So I think everybody here knows what open source technology is, but for the purposes of this conversation, of this discussion, when I think about open source technology, again, you've got the Linux, the really underlying systems, but what I'm focused on are tools like Drupal, like WordPress, software that has a huge amount of functionality built into it that anyone can kind of spin up and start using from day one. The beauty of open source is that it comes with a license that allows you to do what you want with it, that allows you to reuse it in the way that you see fit. And it serves as a foundation for the work that you or your organizations or your clients are trying to do. So why does that matter, right? And why do I talk about this with every single client that I speak with? And I think this is, to me, the key piece of it. When you use open source software rather than a SaaS platform, rather than, let's stick with the CMS analogy here. When you use WordPress versus Sitecore, what do you get? You get control. You get the ability to start thinking about your core platform as your product, not as a piece of software that you've licensed that you have to rely on others to support. You want to build a new feature, you can put that on your roadmap. You can develop it yourself. You don't have to wait for someone else to do that. And I think for businesses in this landscape, where technology is changing, where there's a new AI tool every single day, every single hour, it's ever more important, right? If you don't have control over the technology that you're using to run your business, you're gonna get left behind and you're gonna be at the whim of someone else. So that to me is kind of probably the number one reason that I think open source sets organizations up for success. It also empowers your internal teams, whether that is your engineering teams or your marketing teams. Again, when you think about the roadmap, you're not waiting in the queue, you're not sending in a support ticket, you're actually actively developing. So one of the things we like to do is work with our clients to actually train them, to help them better understand how can they support this product, how can they make sure that once we've handed off the website to them or the application to them, they can actually support it themselves. And what we find is it helps empower those teams in a way that keeps them engaged, that keeps them excited, and that keeps them focused on really what matters, which is understanding, okay, how are we going to make an impact on our business, right? We avoid the conversation that happens anytime you go into a client to bring in new technology, which is my team going to be made redundant? The answer here is no, right? We're going to train your team, we're going to bring them into the process, and they're going to support this going forward. At the core, again, thinking about more of a software-based approach to open source rather than kind of the underlying technologies, it serves as this powerful platform, right? You're not rebuilding things in-house that already exist out there. So, I think if you look back 5-10 years ago, everybody wanted to build their own content management system in-house. They wanted their own proprietary content management system because they thought it would give them this leg up. They thought it would be the secret sauce for them. And it just wasn't, right? Everybody built the exact same thing that everyone else was building. There's only so many ways to store user data in a CRM. There's only so many ways to publish content on the internet with a WYSIWYG editor, right? That these are not technological advances. They're not advantages. They are just the standard things you need to be able to do your job. And so if you can take that and have a foundation of that starts with something that is already out there in the community, out there in the world, it really enables you to focus on where can you develop your kind of unique value proposition. Is it about the content you want to create and you can spend all of your time focusing on content? Is it about the design on the front of the site and you can focus all of your time and energy on that, and you don't have to focus on the things that everyone already has to do? I think the other thing that I've been really impressed with, again, on my open source journey is the power of that community. And when you look at a tool like WordPress, and again, I'm using that because that's what I'm spending most of my days working with, the power of that community means that, all those conversations everyone's had about security problems with WordPress, for example, the reason you have those conversations is because it's used and it powers so much of the web. But when there's a problem with it, and that means when there's a problem with it, it's identified quickly. And because of that community, because of the ubiquity of it, because it's open source, it's incredibly easy to fix that. So yes, things come up. Yes, there are security flaws that happen with open source technologies, just as there are with any piece of technology. If anyone says otherwise, they're lying to you. But the difference is, because that software is out there in the open, because you have access to the code base, it can be fixed quickly, and you can understand what somebody has done to fix it. And I think that underlying understanding, that transparency, that ability to know what powers the thing you are working with is so incredibly important if you're security focused, because you can go to any provider, any SaaS platform, they're not going to show you their code base. You don't know what they're doing behind the scenes. And so by opening that up and by putting that power into the hands of everybody who's a user of that platform, you've really created a transparent environment. And I think more and more, as we continue to leverage technologies, as we continue to bring more integrations into our platforms, as we leverage tools like AI, thinking about the principles of open source, of transparency in underlying code bases, in source code, is so critical for creating an environment where we can trust the software we're using. This is another thing, and I think for me as an agency leader, we talk a lot about customer retention. I don't want to retain customers, though, who are unhappy with me. I don't want to retain customers who don't feel like they can spend the type of money they want to spend with us because they have a cheaper alternative, or maybe they just want to work with an agency that's located in an office next to their office. I think one of the worst things that can happen if you're a services provider is being in a position of vendor lock-in with your clients, because it creates an antagonistic relationship. And so for us, leveraging software that's pretty ubiquitous within the industry allows us to let our clients go, to let them bring that work in-house if they want to let them move to another agency. And I think if I were on the other side of it, I wouldn't expect anything different, right? You want to work with partners, and believe me, our clients stick with us for 5, 6, 7 years, sometimes longer, because of the service we give them, not because they're stuck with us, not because what we've built for them is proprietary. And I think that's really critical to the success of our business. So that's kind of the main points. I think one of the other pieces that I wanted to talk about a little bit is also, again, as we think about how we leverage tools like AI, leverage tools like marketing automation, all of these things that everybody is talking about, whether it's content personalization or how we create different user journeys. Leveraging open source software allows you to pick and choose the best of all of those worlds. And so rather than taking a system that has AI built into it, we take the approach of integration. We take the understanding that there's one tool, there are different tools for different jobs, and we can pick the best one for each of those jobs. And so, again, we're talking about creating an ecosystem and an opportunity for really leveraging the right thing for your organization, right? At the end of the day, for me, what open source does is it puts the control back into enterprise organizations. It allows us as a service provider to focus on the things that matter, to provide great service, but it really avoids those pitfalls of being stuck within a closed system. So that's really what I wanted to talk about. I was asked to do this relatively late, so a shorter keynote than the time I have, but more than happy to answer any questions and yeah, open it up to the audience.